She vanished on a spring morning just a few hundred feet from home, and to this day, her body has never been found. At exactly 7 a.m., her phone lit up. One final selfie, a soft smile, morning sunlight spilling through her hair. 15 minutes later, she was gone. Not a scream, not a sound. And strangest of all, no one saw her get on the school bus that day. At first, police thought she was just a runaway teen, but the bag she left behind told a different story. Inside, clothes, shoes, and one chilling detail that made her family go cold. DNA evidence pointed to a suspect, and 5 years later, he was convicted of murder. But through it all, not once, not even at sentencing, did he say where Sierra's body was. And one question still haunts everyone who knew her. What really happened? On that short walk between her front door and the bus stop that morning, Sierra LaMar wasn't the kind of girl people forgot easily. She had that sharp, striking presence, big expressive eyes, a quick-witted gaze, and the kind of smile that made you like her instantly. Born in Fremont, California, Sierra's life shifted after her parents divorced. She and her mother moved to Morgan Hill, a quiet suburb where the streets were so still you could hear birds calling from the end of the block. For Sierra, it was a fresh start, but not without challenges. New friends, new school, and that lingering feeling that maybe she didn't quite belong. She was a social kid. TikToks, iPhone selfies, pop music, soccer practice. A Gen Z Latina girl through and through. But behind the bubbly exterior were quiet corners few people saw. In her journal, Sierra once wrote about feeling like no one really listens, about how she felt alone even when surrounded by people. Her mother, Marlene, said Sierra had a sharp intuition. She could tell if someone was lying, just a few sentences in. But that same gift made her cautious, especially around strangers. After school, she usually walked home from the bus stop. Just a few blocks, but along a fairly empty stretch of road with no houses close by. I always told her to text me when she got home, her mom said. And she always did. In the last photo taken that morning, Sierra's wearing a pale pink shirt. Her eyes squint slightly against the sun, her hair pulled up in a high bun. There was nothing to suggest that would be the last time anyone saw her. Her mother assumed it was just another normal day. Sierra woke early, grabbed a quick breakfast, and, like always, rushed out the door so she wouldn't miss the bus. But that day, she didn't answer her mom's texts. And by afternoon, when her mother showed up at school to pick her up, no one, not even her friends, had seen Sierra in class. Then came the detail that made everything stranger. Sierra hadn't taken her backpack. No lunch, no jacket. Even though it was still chilly that morning, all she left with was her phone. And days later, that phone was found in a nearby field. Still charged, but with no activity after 7:15 a.m. And there was one thing even her family hadn't known. Not until police unlocked the phone. A message had been deleted. It came from an unknown number. And to this day, no one knows who sent it. The morning of March 16th, 2012 was clear and calm in California. Sunlight filtered gently through the trees, the kind of peaceful morning no one could ever imagine would become the start of a tragedy. Sierra woke up early. At 6:12 a.m., she posted a selfie to social media. She was in her bedroom, cream-colored walls, sunlight slanting across her face from the window. A soft smile, subtle. The kind of photo that was so Sierra, slightly shy, but honest. She stepped out the door around 7:05 a.m. Her mother, Marlene, later said, "I heard the door close but didn't see her. She probably thought she was late for the bus." It was a straight shot from their front door to the bus stop, just 400 meters. Not hidden, but quiet. No security cameras. No neighbors outside that morning. At 7:20, the school bus passed by. The driver reported back, Sierra wasn't there. No one thought much of it. A student missing school wasn't exactly rare. But Marlene felt something different. At 9:00 a.m., she texted, "Did you make it to class?" No reply. By noon, she called. Sierra's phone rang, then went to voicemail. For the first time in years, worry turned to fear. 2:45 p.m., school let out. Sierra wasn't at the bus stop. She hadn't been in class at all that day. 4:10 p.m., Marlene called the school. That's when a teacher confirmed it. Sierra was never marked present that morning. And that was when the storm truly began. Marlene jumped in her car and drove the short route from their home to the bus stop. Every meter felt like a knife in her chest, because everything looked normal. No chaos, no sign of a struggle, no witnesses. At 5:15 p.m., she called the police. They arrived within half an hour. But after hearing the story, one officer asked, "Are you sure she didn't just run away? Any fights? A boyfriend?" Marlene clenched her hands. "She didn't go anywhere. She always texts me. She's never silent like this." But the harsh truth? Police classified the case as a possible runaway teen. There was no evidence of violence, no surveillance footage, no witnesses, just a void. A chilling silence stretching from that 6:12 a.m. selfie to the moment after 7:15 when everything went dark. 3 days later, the search expanded beyond Morgan Hill. Volunteers, classmates, neighbors, even strangers walked empty fields, scoured fences, crawled through roadside ditches. Flyers with Sierra's face appeared on light poles, bus stops, corner stores. Everyone clung to the hope. Maybe she'd just lost touch. Maybe she'd come home. But that hope began to crack when her phone was found. It was lying in the grass nearly a mile from her house. Not shattered. No blood. No signs it had been thrown. And most unsettling, it had been placed face up, carefully. Police sent it for analysis. Data showed the phone was last used at 7:15 a.m., the exact time Sierra should have been at the bus stop. No calls. No texts. Just a frozen trail of app activity that stopped suddenly, as if someone had picked it up and vanished. 2 days later, the true shock came. A volunteer search team, organized by Sierra's family, found a black handbag. Inside, a jacket, jeans, and the shoes Sierra wore that day, folded neatly, placed in the bag. The bag was found in a strange spot, not remote, but not a place anyone had reason to visit. It sat in waist-high grass between an abandoned industrial lot and the highway. Police collected the items and sent them for DNA testing. The results stunned everyone. On the clothing was the DNA of a man named Antolin Garcia Torres. He was 21, lived about 7 miles from Sierra, no criminal record, but past police records showed he'd once been investigated in a 2009 assault, accused of stalking women in a grocery store parking lot. He'd never met Sierra. No social media connection. No shared school. No known link at all. There was no reason his DNA should be on her clothes, unless he touched her, or worse. Police placed Antolin under 24-hour surveillance. He had no idea. Every morning they followed him to work. Every night they logged his movements, his phone calls, who came and went. And then a detail raised red flags. On March 16th, the day Sierra vanished, his red Volkswagen Jetta left his driveway at 6:55 a.m., just 10 minutes before Sierra walked out her front door. Was it a coincidence or something much darker? Antolin Garcia Torres had no idea that every move he made was being tracked. Police already had his DNA inside Sierra's bag. Now, they just needed a legal reason to act. They needed something physical, something concrete, something he couldn't explain away. They watched him for a week, and on the 8th day, they pulled him over. They asked to search his car, a red Volkswagen Jetta. It looked ordinary. Boxes in the back seat, old coffee stains. He seemed cooperative. No panic, no fear. He denied everything. "I never met her," he said. "I don't even know who Sierra is." But police weren't buying it. When they opened the trunk, the first thing they saw was rope. A long, dusty, rough-cut rope, coiled, but still clearly used. And next to it, a single dark brown hair, stuck in the corner of the trunk. Lab results confirmed it. Sierra's hair. A perfect match to the sample taken from her personal hairbrush at home. But that wasn't all. Her fingerprint was found on the rear door handle. There was no reason for it to be there. She didn't know him. She had never been inside that car. No shared friends. No explanation except one. She had been put in that car against her will. So the question was, why hadn't he run? Why still drive the same car, as if nothing ever happened? Police brought him in for questioning. This time, Antolin changed his tone. He admitted maybe he had come into contact with Sierra by accident. He claimed that on the morning of her disappearance, he was taking care of personal business in his car using tissues, and that maybe he had tossed one out near where her bag was later found. The detective just stared at him. In the internal report, they wrote, "His statement lacks logic. It appears solely designed to muddy the evidence." And still, even with his confusing story, something didn't sit right. If he'd kidnapped her, why leave her phone behind? If he'd done something worse, why not clean the car? And if he wanted to cover his tracks, why make up a story so bizarre it barely made sense? What shifted the case wasn't just physical evidence. It was the disconnect between his words and what Sierra's family knew about her. For example, Sierra never accepted rides from strangers. Her mother recalled a fight Sierra had with a friend because the friend accepted a ride from a strange man at the mall. Sierra was extremely cautious, especially around older men. So why was she in his car? If she didn't go willingly, then what happened during that short walk from her house to the bus stop? There was one small detail, almost lost in early reports. A resident living just a few blocks north of Sierra's home remembered seeing a red Jetta parked at the intersection of two quiet streets around 7 a.m. on several mornings before the disappearance. When asked why they didn't report it, they said, "It wasn't doing anything illegal. I thought someone was just waiting for a friend." But pieced together, the picture grew clearer. Antolin may have planned this. He may have known her route, her timing, and all it took was one morning, one moment, and Sierra never came home. Still, Antolin's legal team pushed back. They argued police had pressured witnesses into misremembering the timeline, that the DNA could have come from environmental overlap, meaning if he tossed tissues into the grass and Sierra passed by later, it might explain the contact. It sounded implausible, but legally, it was a crack in the case. Sierra's family had had enough. They went public, spoke to the media, applied pressure. A community group, mostly Latina women, organized a march called "Where is Sierra?" They weren't calling for vengeance. Just one thing, the truth. But the most painful fact still remained. Sierra's body had never been found. No remains, no answers, no funeral, no closure, only a void, cold and unrelenting. On May 21st, 2012, more than 2 months after Sierra disappeared, Santa Clara County authorities officially issued an arrest warrant for Antolin Garcia Torres. On paper, it was a victory. The DNA matched. The fingerprints matched. Witnesses placed his car near the scene. He was charged with 2 major counts, kidnapping and first-degree murder. A press conference was held at the sheriff's department. Behind the podium stood a large black and white photo of Sierra, her soft smile looking straight into the lens. Cameras flashed. Reporters packed the room. One officer spoke. "We believe we have the person responsible for the disappearance of Sierra LaMar." But as he said those words, Sierra's mother, Marlene, sat in the front row, and she didn't shed a single tear because the cold truth remained. Her daughter still hadn't been found. No body, no proof she was dead, just fragments, a phone, a bag, a hair, a fingerprint, and the vague, twisting words of a man with every reason to stay silent. Antolin didn't cooperate. He refused to answer any questions about Sierra's whereabouts. His defense attorney advised silence, and he obeyed. The trial was scheduled, but because of the sheer volume of evidence and legal complexity, the case was delayed for 5 years. In that time, Sierra became a face on a poster. Every March 16th, her family held a vigil, not to mourn the dead, but to call her home. The community slowly split in two. One side believed the case was clear. Antolin was guilty. The evidence spoke for itself. But a smaller, louder group began asking questions. Was someone else involved? Was Antolin protecting someone? Then, a piece of his past surfaced, a blade twisting into the story everyone thought they understood. While preparing for trial, prosecutors dug into Antolin Garcia Torres' history. They weren't looking for a plea deal. They were looking for a pattern, and they found one. In 2009, 3 years before Sierra vanished, Antolin had been investigated in a series of assaults at the Safeway supermarket parking lot where he worked. 3 women told nearly identical stories. A stranger approached as they were getting out of their cars, used force, and tried to shove them into the back seat of his own vehicle. He wore a hoodie, moved quickly, And when they fought back, he fled. No one was raped. No one was killed. And with no strong physical evidence, the cases went cold. Now, using modern technology, the old DNA samples were retested. They matched antolin. The revelation rocked the case. Now, prosecutors could tell the jury this wasn't the first time. He had tried before. He had planned before. And with Sierra, maybe he didn't stop. But there was something strange. In 5 years of pretrial detention, Antolin never changed his story. No pleas, no bargaining, no confession, not even under the threat of the death penalty. He just stared forward and said nothing. His defense used that silence. They tried to paint him as a man targeted for his past, a scapegoat in a justice system pressured by the media and public outcry. Some local journalists began to question, if Antolin killed Sierra, why was there no blood in the car? Why keep the bag and not destroy it? And why didn't he run? The more questions surfaced, the more uneasy the public grew. Some began to believe he hadn't acted alone, that someone else, someone unnoticed, uninvestigated, helped him, or worse, was the mastermind. But whatever the truth may be, as of now, the only person standing trial is him, and every eye, from Sierra's family to the media to a heartbroken community, is waiting for one answer. Where is Sierra? In 2017, after 5 years in custody, the trial of Antolin Garcia Torres finally began. The courtroom was packed. Every day, people lined up early just to get inside. The front row was reserved for Sierra's family, her mother, stepfather, and a few close relatives. They wore t-shirts printed with Sierra's photo and the words, "Still waiting." The prosecutor opened with a powerful statement. He planned it, he carried it out, and now he stays silent because he knows she will never speak again. They laid out the evidence. DNA on her clothes, hair in his trunk, a fingerprint on the back door, his stalking behavior in earlier assaults, and no logical reason for any of that to exist, unless one thing was true. Sierra had been taken. But the defense pushed back with a sharp and unsettling strategy, reasonable doubt. They didn't need to prove innocence. They just needed one juror to hesitate. And they tried to do that by asking, if this was murder, where's the blood? Where's the weapon? Where are the witnesses? Where's the camera footage? And why, after 5 years, has no one found her body? Those questions echoed through the courtroom for weeks. At one point, it seemed the case might fall apart. One juror leaked that they were not 100% sure. Another had to be replaced for allegedly researching the case online. The pressure mounted on both sides. Sierra's mother had to leave the courtroom more than once, not from grief, but from anger. She couldn't understand how anyone could doubt what, to her, was obvious. Her daughter had been murdered. But justice, though slow, eventually spoke. In May 2017, after more than 3 months of testimony, Antolin Garcia Torres was found guilty. The jury agreed. He kidnapped and killed Sierra. But then came a moment that left the room silent. They did not sentence him to death. Instead, he received life in prison without parole. And even then, he said nothing about where Sierra's body was. So the verdict was in, but the story had no ending. The trial was over, but Morgan Hill didn't return to peace. Technically, justice had been served. A man with a violent past was convicted. The family was praised in the media as resilient parents, but when the cameras shut off, the emptiness remained. Sierra's mother kept her daughter's room untouched, the pillow still perfectly placed, afternoon light still warming the window pane. Every morning, she still checked her phone, even though no messages would come. And then, the doubts started to creep in. Not from strangers, but from within the same community. Even from some who had once stood with the family. Some began to ask, if he won't say where the body is, are we sure he even knows? Could someone else have been involved? Someone he's protecting or afraid of? Or did the system rush this case just to satisfy public pressure? The doubt wasn't aimed at one man. It was aimed at the entire process. An independent group made up of investigative journalists and civil rights attorneys launched a podcast. They re-examined the case from the beginning. They questioned the gaps in the timeline. the camera footage that was never publicly released, and one detail in particular. Why has the FBI never recovered Sierra's deleted message from that morning? No one had an answer. In the years that followed, people claimed to see Sierra at a gas station in Fresno, in a public restroom in Modesto, near the Mexico border. Every lead, a dead end. Police said, "We've searched everywhere we possibly can." The family said, "We've never seen our daughter again." And caught in between were millions of people who once read her story, once prayed, once hoped, then fell silent, no longer knowing what to believe. March 2022, exactly 10 years since Sierra vanished. Every year, on March 16th, her family holds a small vigil at the local park. They light candles, share memories, and release white balloons into the sky, like messages sent into the unknown. Even if no one knows where they go, no one expects Sierra to come home anymore. But the deepest pain isn't the loss itself. It's not knowing how she was lost. No body means no funeral. No funeral means no goodbye. And no goodbye means a soul that never finds peace. In one interview, Sierra's mother said, "I don't need him to say, 'I'm sorry.' I don't need a sentence from a judge. I just need to know where my daughter is. I just want to bury her, like any mother would." But those words still drift in silence. From his cell in a maximum security prison, Antolin Garcia Torres remains silent. No confession, no plea deal, no letter to Sierra's family. Every time he's asked, he repeats just one thing: "I don't know who she is." So, is he hiding something? Or was he truly not the last person to see Sierra alive? It's a question even some investigators have carried into retirement. One of them, speaking anonymously, once admitted, "There were a few things that didn't quite line up, but we had to act. The community needed answers. The family needed justice. And when we had enough to prosecute, we followed the evidence." But justice, if incomplete, is it still justice? Sierra's story ends with a selfie, a bag of clothes, and a conviction without a body. And in the middle of it all lies a feeling too many families of color in America know far too well. When the victim isn't white, when the voice isn't loud enough, truth has a way of going quiet. This story is no longer just about Antolin, or even Sierra. It's about a loss with no closure, a truth buried deep, and voices still waiting to be heard. And until one person, just one, finally speaks and says, "I know where Sierra is," Morgan Hill will remain a town with a grief that has no grave.